My name is Dr. Julia Marin. I'm 33 years old, and I'm holding my entire ruined childhood in my left hand. The object is heavier than it should be. A navy blue binder, thick as a law textbook, its corners frayed from being shoved too many times into travel bags and desk drawers. Tonight, it sits between my palm and the glossy walnut finish of my dining table in Manhattan, the only thing separating me from the three people I spent almost a decade trying to forget. The air in my apartment is too still. Outside, just past the shears, city lights waver on the Hudson, but in here, there's only stifled breathing and the squeak of Lorraine Marin's chair. My mother doesn't look at me. Neither does my father, Ronald, gray and shrunken inside his good wool coat. Emily stares at the binder with the same pinched look she used to reserve for my science fair trophies. Part scorn, part fear I might outshine her even now. The silence stretches. I count the seconds the way I did as a child at the dinner table, waiting for someone to notice I existed. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 8. I blink first. Julia, sweetheart, please. Lorraine starts, her voice syrupy and brittle all at once. This isn't. I set the binder on the table with a soft, decisive thump. We're going to do this my way. My tone is the same one I use in the operating theater with junior residents. No one interrupts me there either. My hands are steady, they never tremble, not even when I'm guiding a scalpel through a left anterior descending artery. I flip the binder open to the first tab, 2015. Let's start from the beginning. Ronald shifts in his chair, wheezing. I know his heart is failing. He can barely climb the 2 steps into my lobby. That's why they're here. Not for me, not for apology, but because my blood type matches his, because I'm the only family left who can save him. Don't forget to like the video, and let me know where you're watching from, by the way. I think best when I remember there are witnesses, even if they're invisible. Emily finally speaks. Julia, this is ridiculous. We're not here for whatever this is. Her voice, a little too high, as if she's trying to sound reasonable for the benefit of an unseen jury. I ignore her, my fingers sliding across the plastic divider. I can feel their eyes dart around the room, at the pristine marble countertops, the museum white walls, the gleaming kitchen, where not a single dish is out of place. None of them have seen where I live, not since they forced me out of the house in upstate New York, 9 years and 21 days ago. February 25th, 2015. The page I pause on is dated, time-stamped, a printout of an email. Subject line $12,000 missing. Explanation. The memory stings behind my ribs, raw and vivid as ever. Back then, I was 24, coatless on the porch, my entire life dumped into a single duffel bag. I was the invisible child, accused and erased while Emily, the golden one, cried crocodile tears and Adam, the baby, hid behind his Xbox. You don't have to do this, Julia, Lorraine says. Her hands twist together. Family is everything, darling. We just want. I hold up the binder a little higher so she can't look away. No. You want something. For once you'll listen. Even my pulse is calm. It should terrify me that I'm this steady. 9 years, 87 ignored calls, 14 rejected birthday cards, and a binder full of proof they can't unmake. What they don't know yet, I started counting long before the money ever disappeared, and I never stopped. I was 7, the first time I realized I was see-through. It was the night of Emily's 5th birthday party, and every surface of the dining room was festooned with pink streamers and balloons that left static clinging to my hair. Emily twirled in a dress with a spinning skirt, basking in the camera flashes and the chorus of a dozen sticky-fingered classmates. The air was thick with the scent of vanilla frosting and candle smoke, my father's aftershave, and the brand new plastic of unopened toys. I sat at the very edge of the table, legs swinging off the chair, clutching a book I'd wrapped myself. Because Emily needs to read more, she can't just watch TV all day, Julia. My mother had chided, her voice absent even when she was present. Lorraine was everywhere, scooping out ice cream, straightening Emily's sash, delegating the photo duties to my father. She spared me a glance only when Emily, in a fit of giggles, declared my wrapping the ugliest and tossed my present to the floor. Lorraine's mouth tightened for a moment. 1, 2 seconds, and then smoothed into a smile as she handed Emily a bigger box from Santa, though it was the middle of September. No one opened my gift that night. After the last guest left, I slipped it back into my room and unwrapped it again, smoothing the paper to use later. I counted the hours before someone remembered to thank me. They never did. It was little things always. On report card days, Emily's B-pluses were greeted with applause. My straight A's were met with, well, we expect that from you, Julia, and a quick nod from Ronald, who'd already started reading the business section. Adam the baby was still in diapers then. Chubby, dimpled, the family's prince, every gummy smile charted and celebrated. I'd watch Lorraine beam when Adam burbled, or when Emily trilled out the alphabet song wrong, and I'd wonder if there was a trick to it, some switch I was missing. In our small town in upstate New York, nothing went unnoticed. The houses were old but tidy, yards clipped within an inch of their lives, and everyone knew how many cars you had, how many times the sheriff's cruiser had stopped by, who forgot to shovel the walk after a big storm. On Sundays, we filed into First Presbyterian in our pressed clothes, Lorraine's pearls bobbing at her throat, Ronald's tie always navy and knotted just so. Emily, with her blonde ringlets, was the darling of Sunday school. I, tall and awkward by 12, spent more time sketching in the margins of the bulletin than talking to anyone. Every sermon ended with Lorraine squeezing my hand just a little too tightly, 5 seconds exactly, reminding me, wordlessly, to behave, to represent the Marins properly. "Julia, sit up straight," she'd whisper, as if the whole town might collapse if I slouched for even a second. "Don't make us look careless." For a while I thought maybe it was a game. If I could be perfect enough, I'd win. So I lined up my shoes under the bed and colored inside the lines, answered every question in class, but learned not to raise my hand too often. I started to count things. How many times Lorraine said, "Emily, you're so clever," in a day. How long it took Adam to stop wailing before someone scooped him up. How many minutes I could go unnoticed at the kitchen table before asking to be excused. When I was 12, I recorded each dinner silence in a spiral notebook, lining up the seconds like beads on a string. On birthdays, Emily was given ribbons and cheers. I was given practical things, socks, school supplies, a calculator with my initials etched in Sharpie. Lorraine would smile, "It's good to be prepared, Julia," as if joy was a frivolity I couldn't be trusted with. Once, in 6th grade, I won the state science fair. The trophy was gold plastic, heavy in my hands, and I couldn't help clutching it all the way home, heart pounding with something like hope. At dinner, I set it down between the salt and pepper. Lorraine blinked at it for 3 full seconds. Her fork paused halfway to her mouth. "Is that for the thing with the frogs?" she asked, as if I'd brought home a pet rock. Emily, across from me, rolled her eyes. "Science is boring. Who cares about frogs?" Ronald cleared his throat. "Well, doing well in school's important. But you know, Julia," he stabbed a green bean, eyes on the plate. "Emily's on the honor roll too, and she does cheerleading. Let's not make a fuss." I counted how long it took for someone to ask me about my experiment. They never did. After dinner, Emily used the trophy as a prop in a make-believe game and dropped it on the tile. The base cracked, and I glued it back together in secret. There were good moments too, flashes of normalcy that I hoarded and replayed during darker years. Sometimes on rare afternoons, Ronald would let me watch Jeopardy with him, quizzing me on capital cities or rivers until Lorraine would peek in and shake her head at the Brainiac show. At night, when Adam was small and feverish, I was the one sitting on his bed, counting his breaths, read his storybooks while he slept. But even those moments were borrowed. Lorraine liked her children in clear, symmetrical boxes. Emily, the golden girl, destined for applause. Adam, the sweet baby, forever in need of rescue. Me, Julia, the firstborn, the experiment, the reliable one who didn't need things. The invisible insurance policy. By high school, I'd mastered invisibility. I could slip out early, walk the 2 miles to the library and back, finish calculus homework in the time it took Lorraine to finish 1 mug of tea. See? I joined every science club, every academic decathlon, anything to stay out of the house. I made the swimming team, not because Lorraine cared, she called it unladylike and never came to a meet, but because underwater, in the echoing blue, there were no expectations or voices except my own heartbeat in my ears. Prom was the line in the sand, though I didn't know it then. Emily, 2 years behind me, was already starring in her 8th grade play, Lorraine fussing over her dress and sending out invitations to half the town. My own date was a shy boy from debate club, kind but nervous. The afternoon of the dance, Lorraine pressed a corsage into my hand and said, "Don't embarrass yourself, Julia. Remember, you're a Marin." She didn't take a single photograph. That night, when I came home early because my date had gotten sick, Emily was sprawled on the couch, still in costume, reveling in the afterglow of applause. Lorraine and Ronald were there too, passing her platters of cookies and cold milk, replaying the video of her performance on a loop. No one asked me about the dance. I went upstairs and peeled off my thrift store dress, counting the freckles on my arms. 24. My phone stayed silent. After graduation, I won a full scholarship to Cornell. The guidance counselor had called Lorraine to say it was the biggest award given in our district in 6 years. At graduation, when the principal handed me my diploma, Lorraine clapped for exactly 3 seconds. 1, 2, 3, then turned to hush Adam, who was whining for more Skittles. In the photographs, Lorraine's smile is fixed, her body half turned away, as if already bracing for the effort of letting me go. Emily, in the background, mugged for a friend's phone, holding up a peace sign. I stood on the edge, diploma clutched like a ticket out. College was a revelation. For the first time, I was surrounded by people who wanted to see, not just tolerate, what I could do. I called home every Sunday, at first. Lorraine would answer after 2 rings, ask about the weather, remind me not to overdo it, and then pass the phone to Emily, who'd talk for 17 minutes straight about her new friends, her classes, her next play. Adam rarely came to the phone. Ronald would offer a brief, proud of you kiddo, before hanging up. Those calls dwindled. By junior year of pre-med, they were down to once a month. I started logging them in a spreadsheet, a habit that would later snowball into the binder on my lap today. It felt clinical, safe. A way to measure the shifting tides of affection, or the lack thereof. When Emily got into a decent state school, Lorraine sent out 100 graduation announcements and hired a photographer for cap and gown pictures. My med school acceptance was met with a single Hallmark card, signed in Lorraine's neat, impersonal script. We knew you could do it. Love, Mom. On holidays, I'd come home to a house thick with Emily's laughter and Adam's Xbox games echoing off the walls. Lorraine would delegate chores. Julia, peel the potatoes. Emily, come help me set the table, with the ease of a general marshalling her favorites. I'd wash dishes while Lorraine and Emily pored over social calendars, and Ronald retreated to his den, Adam glued to his screens. I learned how to fade out of photographs, how to step aside so Emily could shine, how to make myself indispensable in invisible ways. The older I got, the more the town shrank around me. Neighbors still remembered my spelling bee wins and swim meets, but only in the context of the Marin family, another branch on the same old tree at the grocery store. Mrs. Klein would pat my arm, so proud of Emily's new job in the city. And Adam, such a sweet boy. How's medical school, dear? 7 words about me, always as an afterthought. I started timing those interactions too. 64 seconds was the longest anyone talked about me, without looping back to Emily or Adam. Looking back, I wonder if Lorraine ever understood the math of neglect, how it multiplies in the quiet spaces. How 7 seconds of silence at dinner becomes 70 minutes of loneliness, which becomes 7 years of hiding your real self just to keep the peace. Still, I kept trying. I sent birthday cards every year, even when they came back, return to sender. I called on Christmas. I sent Adam care packages in college, once even wiring him $200 when he asked sheepishly for a little help with rent. Lorraine always thanked me with a clipped email, 63 words, no warmth. Emily never responded at all. It wasn't all bleak. There were moments of stubborn private pride, seeing my name on published research, earning honors, getting into Columbia Medical School. I threw myself into work, first as a shield, then as a ladder. Every time I crossed a finish line, I'd imagine Lorraine's voice. Don't make this about you, Julia. So I didn't. I let my accomplishments speak in transcripts, in reference letters, in the subtle envy I caught in Emily's emails once she realized I was making more in a week than she did in a month. But even as I built a life, the architecture of my childhood pressed in. Every time I saw Emily's white coat ceremony post on Facebook, her beaming in a group of marketers at her new job, Lorraine gushing in the comments, I'd feel the old ache, the urge to count the ways I didn't belong. The last real conversation I ever had with Lorraine before everything shattered was in the spring of 2014. She called during a thunderstorm, her voice taut. Julia, I hope you're not planning to come home this summer. Emily's internship is very stressful, and we can't have you underfoot. Maybe next year, darling. I remember staring out my dorm window, watching rain bead down the glass, phone pressed to my ear. I counted the seconds after she hung up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5 seconds of static. Then nothing. In a family like mine, love was always measured in what you could do for them and how softly you stepped when Emily was in the room. I learned eventually that some absences echo louder than any shout. That being invisible doesn't mean you're gone, it just means no one looks long enough to see you. By the time I finished med school, I'd mastered the art of being necessary but never central, the rock they leaned on but never celebrated. Lorraine sent a card for residency, this time 52 words. Ronald called, told me the taxes were complicated that year, and asked if I'd co-sign a loan if needed. I agreed, then hung up and stared at my hands, wondering if you could become a ghost while still walking around in daylight. So when the real betrayal came, the accusation, the exile, I shouldn't have been surprised. Even an invisible child leaves footprints. And in a family obsessed with spotless floors, eventually, someone is going to sweep you out. The morning of February 25th, 2015 opened with a false spring sunlight, slanting through the kitchen window and painting everything in our old house a fragile gold. I remember the way the light fell across the pattern of the vinyl floor, tracing the cracks in the kitchen table, the dust swirling beside the refrigerator magnets. I was home for a week. My last winter rotation had ended 2 days early, so I'd driven north from the city, hoping for a kind of truce. Ronald had been sick most of that winter. Congestive heart failure, the diagnosis said, but Lorraine brushed it off as just a little tiredness. And Adam, home on break, barely noticed behind his headphones. Emily was in and out, flitting between her new job Zoom meetings and her boyfriend's couch in Poughkeepsie. I'd arrived late the night before. No one had waited up. No guest towel left on my bed, just the cold air pressing through the sheets and the distant hum of the baseboard heater. I should have known before I unpacked that nothing had changed. Still, I made scrambled eggs for Dad that morning, the way he liked, overcooked, a little rubbery, with a dusting of paprika on top. I set his plate in front of him, and he startled, as if discovering a stranger in his kitchen. "Thanks, kid," he muttered, voice hoarse. He barely met my eye. Lorraine was already on her second mug of tea, purse clutched to her chest like a life vest. The air was thick with the scent of burnt toast, and Adam, sullen and scruffy, scrolled through his phone at the counter without looking up. Emily breezed in, late cheeks pink against the February chill. She wore a new winter coat, camel wool, expensive, the kind Lorraine would have called classic. She tossed her bag onto the table, knocking over the salt shaker, and flashed everyone her news anchor smile. "I have to run into the city today, but first, I need to talk to you all." She took her seat at the head of the table. I watched Lorraine's eyes dart from Emily's face to mine, tension knotting her lips. She gripped her tea for 2-3 seconds. The old dance. Emily slapped a sheet of paper onto the table. The sound was sharp enough to make Ronald flinch. "There's money missing," she said, her tone somewhere between an accusation and a whine. "Dad checked his account last night, $12,000 gone. Gone. And the only one who even touched his office in the last week was Julia." My mind blanked for an instant, the way it does when you suture a vessel and it starts to bleed anyway. Panic, then focus. I stared at the bank statement, my name inked in the margins in Emily's loopy handwriting, the withdrawal circled in red. I hadn't seen the inside of Ronald's office in months. Lorraine's fingers drummed on the table 4 taps. "Julia," she said, soft but deadly. "What's this about?" I forced my voice steady. "I didn't do this. I haven't even logged into Dad's account since I helped with his taxes last summer. Emily, you know that." Emily huffed, flipping her hair as if to signal the performance's next act. "Well, you're the only one with access. I don't have Dad's passwords. Adam wouldn't know how to do any of this stuff." Adam's head jerked up, his face pale. "Don't look at me. I don't even know the login." Ronald's breathing was shallow. He looked at the paper, then at me, then away. "It makes sense, Jules. You're good with computers. You needed cash for school, didn't you?" I felt the room tilt, the floor receding under my feet. "Dad, my tuition's covered. I have scholarships. Why would I take your money? I'd tell you if I needed help. You know I would." Lorraine's face pinched, years of worry settling into the lines beside her mouth. "Family is everything, Julia, but we have to be honest with each other. This is serious. Are you struggling with something? If you needed money, you could have asked." The injustice burned hot and acid. "I didn't take anything. If someone accessed the account, it wasn't me. Why are you asking me this way? Why are you believing?" I bit my tongue, trying to swallow down the old, bitter taste. Emily's voice sharpened, brittle. "Because you were here, Julia, and honestly, you've always been a little off lately. You barely come home, you don't answer group texts. Maybe if you were more involved." Lorraine cut in. "Let's not make this about old wounds. The fact is, there's money missing, and we need answers now." Adam shrugged, twisting his phone in his hands. "Emily's right. You're always talking about being so busy. Maybe you just forgot you did it." My hands curled tight in my lap, nails pressing crescents into my palm. It was like being 7 again, blamed for the broken lamp or the spilled juice. Only now the stakes were higher and the audience more cruel. I looked at each of them, their eyes carefully avoiding mine or fixed with furious certainty. For a minute, no one spoke. I counted the seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Lorraine broke the stalemate. "We can fix this, Julia, but you have to tell the truth. Was it for rent or something else? I'm sure your job isn't easy in the city." It must be a lot of pressure, being a doctor. I could feel my pulse in my teeth. You want to see my accounts? My credit card statements? I'll print every page. I didn't take anything. Emily, why are you doing this? Emily threw up her hands. Oh my God, Julia, stop making this about me. Why is it always about you? You're not the victim here. Ronald's voice cracked. If you just admit it, we can move on. It's just money. Family is family. I stared at them. These people, the ones who taught me how to count, who taught me to make beds with square corners, who'd let me slip through the years like vapor, were now looking at me like I was a thief, a stranger. Lorraine's gaze was cold, decisive. If you can't be honest with us, Julia, you can't stay here, not until this is resolved. We can't. She stopped. 6 seconds passed. We can't trust you right now. Emily folded her arms, triumphant. You heard, Mom? Adam was already halfway out of his chair. I have to go meet Chad anyway, he mumbled, not meeting my eyes. I stood, the chair legs scraping against the floor. The sound was final, a gavel. I looked at my father, he wouldn't meet my eyes. Lorraine's lips were pressed to a thin line, her hand still wrapped around that mug as if waiting for an answer that would make sense. Emily watched me, her chin high, daring me to fight back. I could see the outline of my future in that moment. Cut out, erased, reduced to a cautionary tale they'd tell at family dinners in hushed tones. My voice was calm, clinical, as if dictating a case note. If that's what you want, I hope you find your answers. No one stopped me. I went upstairs, the old wood creaking beneath my steps, and packed my bag, clothes, laptop, my Cornell sweatshirt, the photograph of me and Ronald fishing at Lake George when I was 8. I left the rest. When I came down, the kitchen was empty. Lorraine's mug was in the sink, cold tea pooling at the bottom. Emily's coat was gone from its hook. Adam's phone charger sat abandoned on the counter. I stepped out onto the porch, the morning already seeping cold into my bones. I waited for someone to call me back, to shout, to ask for the truth, not just for the easiest story. No one did. As I closed the door behind me, I counted the seconds before I let myself cry. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I made it to 8 before the tears came, silent as snowfall on the old cracked steps. I drove away with the radio off. I didn't look in the rearview mirror. I left my key in the mailbox, tucked behind the phone bill. If Lorraine found it, she never told me. That afternoon, I sent an email, subject line, statement alleged withdrawal. I attached every document I had, bank statements, tuition receipts, scholarship letters. No one replied. Within a week, I was locked out of the family group chat. My birthday card came back, unopened. I called twice, no answer. Adam blocked my number. Emily posted a status on Facebook. Some people never change. Thankful for real family. Lorraine liked it, 3 minutes after it went up. 3 months later, my grandmother died. I found out from a friend's mother, not from my own family. The funeral came and went without me. I started logging everything, the calls, the cards, the messages, the silence. I bought a navy blue binder and began to print each piece, labeling them by date and wound. I told myself it was evidence, insurance, a way to prove I wasn't crazy, to prove that I was still real. But the truth was colder than any February morning. My family had always needed someone to blame, and this time, they chose me. When they closed that door, they didn't just shut me out, they erased me, page by page, until all that was left was the record I kept. And even that, in the end, wasn't enough for them. Moving out of that house in February 2015 should have felt like being cut loose, like shedding a skin that never quite fit. Instead, those first months were a study in survival. Unmoored, hollowed out, and so bone-tired I sometimes woke unsure which hospital call room I was in, or what city the wind was keening through outside the window. Yet, even then, there was work. Always work. Columbia's surgical residency is legendary for a reason. It grinds you down, burns away anything unnecessary. For every hour of sleep I lost, for every lecture I attended with my stomach in knots from stale vending machine coffee, I buried the ache of my family one layer deeper under rounds, charts, exams. I learned to live in the bright, antiseptic world of the hospital, the rhythm of pagers, the taste of clean gloves, the clockwork efficiency of a trauma response. No one asks you about your mother at 3:17 a.m. in a freezing OR while you're suctioning blood from a ruptured aorta. My first night on trauma call, my hands stank of betadine and sweat. I'd just finished closing up a 12-year-old spleen when I checked my phone on break. I'd sent Lorraine a simple text hours before, started my first overnight in the ER. Wish me luck. The read receipt glared up at me. Time-stamped 8:14 p.m., no reply. I screenshotted it, tucked it into a folder on my phone, receipts twice 2.5 bank 100 no reply march 03.png. I began to understand, with every ignored message and bounced birthday card, that my family had no intention of forgiving or remembering. Residency forced a new kind of counting. How many hours since I'd eaten? How many minutes since I'd slept? How many times I washed my hands until the knuckles split and bled? But I never lost the old habits. When my 25th birthday approached in April, I picked out a card I thought Lorraine would like, bluebells and a gold script. Thanks, Mom. I wrote 3 careful paragraphs about the city, my patients, the fairy horns I heard every morning walking home. I even included a photograph of my white coat embroidered with Marin, J and crisp navy thread. I mailed it from the hospital lobby at 9:08 a.m. on April 12th. It came back stamped, in red, returned to sender, no forwarding address. I logged the date, April 19th, 2015, slipped the unopened envelope into the pocket of the navy binder, under the tab marked Year 1 The Vanishing. Sundays were the worst at first. Hospitals slow down a little, unless trauma hits, and the city outside the windows softens into something that almost looks gentle. But for me, Sundays hurt. I'd check my phone compulsively, no missed calls, no texts, just an empty screen reflecting back a face I barely recognized. That changed the first time I met Dr. Frances Delaney Frank, as she insisted everyone call her. Frank was chief medical officer at Columbia, notorious for her brisk walk and her sharper tongue. She caught me one morning at 4 a.m., hunched over a stack of charts, eyes gritty with sleep. "You're Julia Marin," she said, voice like granite. "The one who sews like a tailor and hides in the call room." She looked at my posture, the empty vending wrappers, the way my hands shook just a bit. "You eat yet, Marin?" I shook my head, not trusting myself to speak. Frank tossed a protein bar onto my paperwork, then sat down beside me, elbows on her knees. "Listen, you'll burn out before you hit 30 if you keep at this pace." She nodded at my binder. Yes, I carried it even then, smaller, thinner, but always close. "What's that?" "Just family stuff," I managed. She grunted. "Well, you pick your family in this life. Sometimes you're born with them, but mostly, you find them in the trenches." She pointed at my white coat. "Sew your name in deep, Dr. Marin. Don't let anyone steal it." The first time I cried in front of Frank was 6 months later. I'd just gotten off a double shift, hands shaky from too much adrenaline, my phone heavy with another returned card, this one for Adam, a box of cookies and a note for his birthday. The package came back dented, torn at the corner, a crisp refused label slapped over my handwriting. I tried to throw it out, but my hands wouldn't let go. Frank found me in the break room, hunched over the box, swallowing down humiliation. She sat next to me, silent for a long minute, 62 seconds, I counted, before she spoke. "You can leave it here if you want," she said, her accent softening around the edges. "Or you can keep it and remember exactly who you're doing this for. You matter, Julia, even if they pretend otherwise." Frank became my Sunday call, my dinner reservation, my ride home after the longest days. She called me kid until the first time I out-argued her about an aortic dissection case, after which she upgraded me to doc. She gave me a standing invitation to Sunday dinners at her brownstone long tables crowded with other stray souls, residents too tired to go home, nurses with no family in the city, the occasional medical student from another country. Frank's kitchen was steaming and loud, smelling of garlic and roast chicken, a world away from the clinical quiet I'd grown up with. On those Sundays, I learned the shape of chosen family. Laughter that didn't shrink me, stories that didn't require erasing my past, a place at the table without having to ask. I never mentioned the navy binder, but Frank saw it in my bag, thickening year by year. I kept sending cards, Mother's Day, Christmas, even Memorial Day. 14 cards in those first 3 years, all returned unopened. I tabbed each one in the binder, logging the date, the address, and the postmark. Sometimes Lorraine switched her handwriting on the return to sender label, as if to throw me off. Sometimes it was Emily's block capitals. Once for Adam's graduation, I enclosed a check for $150. It came back with a sticky note. Lorraine's script. "We don't need your charity." "Family is everything, Julia. Don't make this about you." That one. I logged under 2017 returned gifts. The first time I saw Emily's name pop up on social media, March 2016, it was a post about toxic people tagged vaguely, but the comment thread erupted with distant relatives offering hugs and, "Hope you're okay." Emily responded, "Some people just can't be trusted, even if they wear a white coat." I took a screenshot, filed it in the 2016 tab. That was the first of 6 major incidents over 9 years. Smears, subtweets, even a time she messaged a former med school friend of mine to warn her I was unstable. Each one dated, documented, preserved. Sometimes I wondered if they would run out of ways to erase me. But the internet is infinite, and so is petty cruelty. Work became my armor. I rose through the ranks quickly, too quickly, according to some of the older surgeons. By 2020, I was running my own research trials on minimally invasive bypass techniques. Frank wrote my recommendations, checked my math, roasted my bad PowerPoints, and filled out my application for chief of surgery with a wink. The day the board announced my appointment, Frank brought champagne and a chocolate cake to the surgical lounge. She insisted on a photo, me holding the cake, her arm slung around my shoulder. When the hospital newsletter came out, Lorraine didn't call. Emily left a comment on the hospital's Facebook post. Pity some people only care about publicity. Another screenshot for the binder, dated March 3, 2021. That same month, I sent flowers for Ronald's 60th birthday. The card came back shredded in a plastic bag, taped to a note. Stop sending these. Sometimes the memories hit at the strangest times. I'd find myself standing in an empty operating room after midnight, the scent of antiseptic sharp enough to sting my eyes, and the old ache would rise up. How many times had I tried to give them a reason to be proud? How many more birthdays would pass before I stopped trying? I forced myself to count the positives, too. Frank, with her loud off-key singing while she cooked. Her wife, Letty, who remembered my favorite wine and once knitted me a scarf in hospital blue. The residents who called me Dr. Tulling. And left-hand drawn thank you cards in my office after I saved a life. The first time I stood on the podium at a surgical conference and looked into a crowd of strangers who knew only my work, not my wounds. But the binder never left me. I updated it meticulously. Every screenshot, every email, every overture rejected. Holidays were the worst. Thanksgiving 2018. Lorraine posted a family photo, Emily center stage, Adam at her side, Ronald and Lorraine flanking them. The caption, grateful for all my blessings. Family is everything. Not even a mention of me. I printed the photo, slid it behind the 2018 holidays tab. 87 ignored calls over 9 years. I know because I logged each one, date, time, duration of the ring before voicemail. Sometimes I'd leave voicemails anyway. Hi mom, just wanted to check in. Hope you're doing okay. Or, Adam, there's a new Marvel movie coming out. Call me if you want to go. Silence. Each transcript copied out, placed in the binder, another brick in the wall between us. On the rare occasions I ran into people from home, old classmates, family friends, they'd bring up Lorraine's latest Facebook post, or how Emily was, killing it in digital marketing, or Adam's string of odd jobs. No one asked about me. The Marin grapevine was thorough and selective. When the pandemic hit, Manhattan went quiet for the first time in my memory. Sirens replaced traffic, and the hospital halls rang with a new, desperate urgency. I worked double shifts for weeks on end, slept in borrowed scrubs, ate on the run. I called home twice, just to check if Ronald was safe, if Lorraine needed anything. Both calls went straight to voicemail. I didn't leave a message. I added those dates, March 18th, March 21st, 2020, to the growing column in my spreadsheet, pandemic check-ins, no response. The hospital became my home completely. I started building my own traditions with Frank and Letty, Zoom dinners for exhausted residents, birthday cakes in the staff kitchen, Friday night phone calls that stretched for hours, even when we were too tired to do more than laugh about Letty's latest baking disaster, or Frank's ancient dog chewing up another shoe. Some nights, I'd finish a 15-hour shift, let myself into Frank's brownstone, and find a plate waiting in the oven. She'd wave me in, hand me a glass of wine, and never ask about my family unless I brought it up. Frank knew how to sit in silence when the past rose up too sharp to talk around. Once, she saw me pulling out the binder. This was year 6, the navy plastic now creased along the spine, and said, "You know, you're allowed to stop collecting those receipts. They'll never give you what you want." I shook my head. It's not for them, it's for me, proof that it happened, that it matters. She gave me a long look. Well, kid, you built your own archive. Maybe someday you'll use it for something more than just pain. By 2022, I'd stopped expecting anything from the Marins except targeted malice and curated silence. Adam lost another job, this time at a car dealership. Emily bounced between marketing gigs. Lorraine retired and started posting daily quotes about forgiveness and gratitude. Ronald's health, I heard through the grapevine, was declining, trip after trip to the cardiologist, a slowed gait, a hospital stay for exhaustion. I thought about reaching out. Every time I stopped myself, the binder was thick enough to remind me why. Instead, I poured myself into work. I developed a new surgical protocol that cut bypass recovery times by 5 days. I was invited to keynote at conferences in Boston, Chicago, Zurich. I started my own research fund for women in surgery, named after Frank, who pretended not to cry, but bought out a bakery with cupcakes for the announcement. My social media was professional, sterile. Photos from award ceremonies, surgical team shots, the occasional selfie with Frank's dog. Emily's attacks grew more subtle. Some people only post their highlight reels. Real family shows up when it counts. Each post a small, calculated slice. 6 total in 9 years: March 2016, August 2017, January 2019, October 2020, May 2022, and, finally, the worst in December 2023, when she messaged a National Medical Board anonymously about a family member's ethical lapses. I never confronted her, the inquiry went nowhere. But I documented the entire chain in the binder, screenshots and all. I stopped sending cards after the 14th came back in 2023. I stopped calling. The binder moved with me, from my first studio in Morningside Heights to a sun-drenched one-bedroom near Central Park, and finally to my own apartment with river views, where I could watch the city flicker and know I'd built something no one could taint. Still, the ache didn't vanish. Some nights, I'd trace the edges of the binder, read over my own careful notations, and wish just once they'd called to say they were sorry, or proud, or anything. But years of counting teaches you the truth. You can't bargain with ghosts. Frank knew, in her own way. She showed up for the big moments. My first day as chief, the launch of my research project, the night I testified at a city council hearing on public health. She was the first person to hug me after a difficult surgery, the last one to leave after cleaning up a mess of takeout containers in my apartment after a 12-hour shift. Once, on a late October evening, she caught me staring at the Hudson, binder open in my lap. "You know," she said, "the only thing lonelier than holding on to the past is pretending it never happened." I didn't answer. I just closed the binder, set it beside my wine, and let her sit next to me while the city lights painted the water silver. By the time 2024 rolled around, the binder had outgrown its rings. 9 tabs, one for each year, every injustice, every absence, every small, sharp wound cataloged and organized. I lived a life they'd never imagined: surgeon, researcher, mentor, friend. I'd made more money than any Marin before me, built a team that called me family, carved out a place in the world that couldn't be erased. But still, I counted, and still, I kept the proof. So when the call came, March 18th, 2024, 7:12 p.m., it almost felt inevitable. My phone lit up with Lorraine's number. For the first time in years, I let it ring 4 times. My finger hovered over decline, but I answered, out of habit or curiosity or a stubborn desire to know how low they'd go. "Julia," Lorraine's voice, brittle and unfamiliar. "It's about your father. He's very sick. He needs a transplant, and you're the only match." A pause, 3 seconds. "We need your help." I looked at the binder, balanced on the edge of my desk, and felt something inside me shift. Not anger, not grief, just a cold, precise clarity. They wanted to rewrite the story, pretend 9 years of absence, cruelty, slander, and indifference never happened. That's the thing about people like Lorraine and Emily, they only count what's convenient. They think the ledger can be wiped clean if they want something badly enough. But I have the receipts. I have every second, every silence, every piece of proof. "You're going to come here," I said, my voice as steady as a scalpel. "You're going to listen. And for once, you're going to understand exactly what you asked me to survive." Lorraine didn't understand. Ronald didn't. Emily certainly didn't. But Frank did. She was the first one I called after I hung up, told her what was coming, what I planned to do. She just said, "You do what you have to, kid. I'll have dinner waiting, whatever happens." The next morning, I took the navy blue binder off the shelf, laid it flat on my kitchen table, and ran my fingers over the tabs. Year by year, I remembered every time they chose silence, every time they picked someone else, every time they decided I wasn't worth the effort. 9 years, logged and labeled. Evidence, armor, truth. I dressed with care, dark blue suit, white silk blouse, hospital badge clipped to my lapel, a life they never saw, a version of myself built from everything they tried to erase, and I waited for them to arrive, binder in hand. This is what survives when love is conditional, not rage, not even sadness. Just a record, meticulously kept, a life built in receipt of all the things you were denied. So when the elevator doors opened and I saw them, older, smaller, desperate, I understood at last what Frank meant. You can keep counting forever, or you can finally, just once, lay the evidence down and force them to see. I took a deep breath, adjusted the binder in my arms, and stepped forward to meet them. Lorraine is the first to speak when they walk into my apartment, as if she's the lady of the house, as if these walls have ever known her perfume or her pinched lemony presence. She scans the room, cataloging the clean planes of glass, the soft gray couch, the quiet order I've constructed around myself. Her eyes catch on the vase of tulips, Frank's gift, at the center of the dining table, and I see her lips twitch, calculating whether that detail can be used for or against me. Ronald follows 3 steps behind, leaning heavier on his cane than I remember, the lines at the corners of his mouth deeper, his shoulders rounded in an old man's surrender. He doesn't look at me. I wonder, with a clinical detachment, if he avoids my face because he can't bear the guilt, or if he just can't remember anymore what it feels like to see me in his own home. His breathing is labored, each inhale a small private war. He smells faintly of antiseptic and mothballs. Emily enters last, phone in hand, thumbs working furiously at the screen. She doesn't even pretend to be present, glances up only long enough to let her eyes slide across the navy blue binder resting at my place on the table. She wears a blazer that's a shade too bright, hair sleek and perfect, the Marin mask firmly in place. Her face thinner now, sharper still holds that imperious look, as if the world is a stage and she is owed the spotlight. I let them settle. Lorraine shrugs off her coat and hangs it on the back of a chair without asking. Ronald lowers himself carefully into a seat, wincing Emily. After a long theatrical sigh, collapses into the chair across from me and sets her phone down, screen up. She doesn't look away from it. No one says anything for 11 seconds. I count 1, 2, 3, 4. The silence is a living thing. I won't be the first to speak this time. Finally, Lorraine clears her throat, her voice dropping into the register she uses for church volunteers and stubborn sales clerks. You look, well, Julia, the place is very modern. She makes it sound like a criticism. I suppose that's Manhattan for you. I nod, neutral. It suits me. Ronald coughs. I watch his hands fidget in his lap, wedding band spinning, knuckles swollen with age and medication. He tries for a smile, but it flickers and dies. Jules, it's good to see you. Been too long. Too long, I think, and yet not long enough. Emily tosses her hair, finally making eye contact. Nice view. She gestures at the window, as if we're making small talk at a work mixer. Must be good to have that kind of space. Real estate's crazy these days. I let her words drift, noting the easy entitlement in her tone. No apology, no acknowledgement. She jumps straight to envy, as if I've won a prize she wanted. Lorraine sits, folding her hands carefully, knuckles white. We're all here because, well, she glances at Ronald, who stares at the table. Because your father needs you, and we need to move forward as a family. Family. The word lands brittle. Emily jumps in, her voice oily practiced. Dad's been sick. The doctors at St. John's. Well, you know how it is with these small-town hospitals. They're doing their best, but it's a lot to manage. She looks pointedly at my hospital badge, the implication clear. I let the silence fall again. 5 seconds. 6. They squirm. It's the only power I have left, making them wait, forcing them to sit in the discomfort they never once afforded me. Lorraine recovers first. Julia, dear, the truth is, Ronald's condition is complicated. He needs a transplant, and the doctors say you are the best match among us. She hesitates, then pastes on a smile, and with your experience, your connections, we thought, well, who better to help guide us through this? You've always been so capable. Capable, invisible, the reliable one, summoned only when there's a fire to put out. Ronald nods, finally looking up. His eyes are watery, unfocused. I know it's been a while, kiddo. Things got mixed up. Your sister said you'd help. Emily leans forward, eager now, her performance sharpening. Look, I know there's been stuff. But Dad's really sick, Julia. This isn't the time for old grudges. We're family. Family is supposed to help each other. The way she says it, so blithely, so certain, makes my chest ache. She has always been skilled at editing reality to suit her needs. Lorraine jumps at the chance to press the narrative. We're willing to put the past behind us, Julia. What matters is Dad gets the help he needs. Surely you see that. I study their faces. Lorraine's tight smile, Ronald's confusion, Emily's calculated brightness. They're playing a part, reading from a script where forgiveness is a one-way street and history is whatever they decree today. My fingers rest on the binder. I open it, just enough for the plastic tab to catch the light. No one acknowledges it directly, but I see Emily's jaw harden, her eyes flicker with old apprehension. She knows what lives inside these pages. I take a slow breath, steadying my voice. You said you'd like to put the past behind. Before we talk about Dad's condition, I need to understand what you think the past was. Lorraine's smile falters, then tightens. We don't need to rehash. I do. I interrupt, my tone colder than steel. Because you've come here after 9 years of silence, and you're sitting in my home as if nothing happened. Emily rolls her eyes. Julia, we're not teenagers. Things got blown out of proportion. I get that you were upset. Upset? My voice is even clinical. I was erased. I was accused, shut out, called a thief. For 9 years, you ignored every attempt I made to reach you. 14 cards, 87 calls, not a reply. Lorraine shifts, her eyes dropping to the table. You made your choices, Julia. We thought you needed time. And Emily, well, you know how Emily is. She was confused. Emily bristles but stays silent. I see the calculation in her eyes. How to spin this. How to get to the ask. Ronald sighs, a rattling exhale. We all make mistakes, Jules. Your mother's right. The important thing is now. We need you. There it is, naked and unadorned. I let the silence stretch again, watching Lorraine's hands knot in her lap. I remember every second I counted waiting for her to speak up for me. Every minute I waited outside my own home, hoping for the door to open. The weight of the binder grounds me. Emily can't help herself. Look, things got messy. But you've done well for yourself, haven't you? Her tone is almost accusing now. You have a good job, this apartment, all the connections. We're just asking you to do the right thing. Lorraine softens her voice, slipping on the old maternal concern. We need each other, Julia. There's no one else who can help your father. Wouldn't you want someone to help you, if you were in his shoes? I stare at her, and for a moment the ache is so raw, I almost forget to breathe. But years of training win out. My face stays calm, my voice steady. I want to be clear, I say. You want my help as a surgeon, as a donor, if necessary, as a bank account, if the experimental list is too expensive. I look at each of them in turn, but you haven't come for me. You've come for what I can give you. Emily's face hardens. Don't be dramatic, Julia. This isn't about money, it's about family. Really? I flip open the binder, turning it so they can see the careful tabs, the dated printouts. Because when I reached out, year after year, you sent everything back. When I called, you blocked my number. When I sent money for Adam, you refused it. When I published research, you called it showing off. When I invited you to my white coat ceremony, my birthday, my first Christmas alone, nothing, not a word. Lorraine's voice wavers, but she soldiers on. We were hurt. You never explained. You disappeared. I was thrown out, I say, flat. Because Emily lied about $12,000, and you believed her. You told me to prove a negative or leave. You chose to believe the story that made your lives easier. Emily's cheeks flush. I never lied. Maybe you forgot, Julia, but Dad showed us the account. No, I cut in. Dad let you point the finger, and you all followed. You never asked for proof. You never tried to hear me. You just closed the door. And now, 9 years later, you want to talk about forgiveness. For the first time, Ronald looks properly ashamed. His hands tremble in his lap. We didn't know what else to do. The money was gone, and I offered statements, records, everything. You never opened them. The room is heavy with their discomfort, the air syrupy with the effort of their denial. Lorraine tries one last time, the plea in her voice practiced, worn. Julia, we're all we have. Your father, he's dying. He needs you. Can't we just move on? I closed the binder, the snap of the rings punctuating the end of her appeal. You want to move on, but only because you're out of options. You want to rewrite the last 9 years because now the numbers are in your favor. But I haven't forgotten. I can't. Emily's eyes are cold. So what? You're just going to punish us? After all this time, you think you're so perfect? I shake my head. No, I just want honesty. I want you to admit what happened and why you're really here. No one speaks. 6 seconds. 7. 8. Lorraine finally sags, defeated. I gather the binder, place it squarely on my lap. We're not finished yet. But you need to know, I am not your safety net. Not anymore. You can't erase what I've built, or what you destroyed. The silence is immense, but for the first time, I am not afraid of it. The numbers are finally in my favor, and the clock is still ticking. My hand rests on top of the navy blue binder, fingers splayed as if steadying something volatile. The room is thick with their discomfort. Emily's impatient tapping, Lorraine's barely contained fretfulness, Ronald's rattling breath merging with the city's distant hum. I feel the familiar tension twisting around my spine, pressing the next words to the tip of my tongue. But I don't rush. I have waited 9 years for this, and in the waiting, I have made myself immune to panic. I flip open the cover deliberately. The plastic rings click against each other, a sound so crisp that Emily jumps, her phone sliding closer to the edge of the table. Let's clarify, I say, voice as still and sharp as the midnight OR. You didn't just forget me, you went out of your way to erase me. I want you to see it, the record you left behind. Emily snorts a brittle sound. So this is what, your scrapbook of grievances? I meet her gaze, flat, unblinking. This is evidence. You like numbers, Emily. Let's start with a few. I slide out the first tab, 2015, and lay a page in front of them, a printout of the email I sent on February 25th, 2015, 4 hours after you kicked me out. 2. Lorraine Marin, Ronald Marin. From Julia Marin. Subject statement re-alleged withdrawal. Sent 3:24 p.m., February 25th, 2015. I did not take the money. Please see attached PDFs of my bank records, tuition invoices, and scholarship confirmation. I want to resolve this, but you need to talk to me directly. Julia. I tap the corner. No reply. Not that day. Not ever. The attachments were never opened. I have the read receipts to prove it. Would you like to see? Lorraine's face flushes, fingers knotting in the fabric of her skirt. We were confused, Julia. We thought maybe it was some mistake, or... I slide over the next page, a screenshot of my online banking, the two-factor text confirmation for a $0 balance on February 26, 2015. I sent these again on March 2nd, 2015, after Adam texted, "Why'd you steal from Dad?" I push a printed transcript of the message toward Adam's empty chair. Again, no reply. But Adam blocked my number that afternoon. You did too, Emily. I logged it, March 2nd, 4:51 p.m. Your response was to post this on Facebook. I turn the binder for Emily to see. It's a screenshot of her status, dated March 3rd, 2015. Some people never change. Thankful for real family. 6 relatives commented. Lorraine liked it 3 minutes later. Emily's lips twist, but she glances at Lorraine, waiting for her cue. Lorraine tries, her voice trembling, trying to salvage composure. We were upset. You have to understand. Money was missing. Your father was sick. We needed time. I flip to the next tab. Time, I echo, is something I counted. 14 cards, returned Lorraine. Here, I slide out the stack, bound with a neat rubber band. Each envelope marked with red, return to sender. Lorraine's handwriting on half, Emily's on the others. Birthdays, Mother's Days, even Adam's graduation. Not one opened. Not even when I sent a check for Adam. Lorraine lifts the stack with trembling hands, staring at her own looping script. We thought you'd moved on. We didn't know if you wanted contact. I cannot help the small smile that flickers at the corner of my lips. You made it very clear what you did not want, Mom. The cards, the voicemails, 87 to be exact, each logged here. I tap the binder's spine. Would you care to listen to one? I have transcripts if it's easier. Ronald's eyes are wet. For a moment, I almost feel sorry for him. But pity is a luxury I cannot afford. Emily leans forward, trying to seize control. You're acting like we're on trial. I cut her off with a gentle clinical detachment. Not a trial. Just a record. You accused me of theft. You spread that story at family gatherings, at church. Shall we look at the screenshots? I flipped to a section labeled 2016 Slander. March 14th, 2016. Emily, you told Aunt Rachel that I was troubled and couldn't be trusted with money. She wrote me a letter. Here, I saved it. She never answered when I replied, because you told her not to. Lorraine shakes her head, the denial automatic. That's not fair, Julia. You don't know. I know exactly what was said. October 2nd, in 2017, Facebook Messenger. Emily, you messaged one of my residency colleagues. Just a heads up, she's not as stable as she seems. I have the messages, the screenshots, the date. She showed them to me herself. Emily's eyes dart away, a flush creeping up her neck. That was years ago. People vent. You don't have to. I do, I say, voice soft but relentless. Because you never stopped. 2019, voicemail transcript. Lorraine's voice. Don't make this about you, Julia. Adam is struggling and we don't need your drama. Please do not contact us again until you're ready to apologize. The call lasted 53 seconds. I counted. The binder is a living thing beneath my hands, an archive of their choices. I pull out a printout of a social media post. Thanksgiving, 2018. Lorraine's words. Grateful for all my blessings. Family is everything. No mention of me. Not one. Ronald's voice is hoarse, almost inaudible. We didn't know how to reach you. We thought you'd want space. I shake my head. You wanted absence. You just didn't want to be responsible for it. Emily tries for anger, but it comes out brittle. So what? You want us to grovel? You want us to beg? Dad's dying, Julia. He doesn't have time for. For what? My voice is pure steel now, though never raised. For the truth? For the reality that, for 9 years, you all conspired to erase me. A daughter, a sister, a human being, and now you want to pretend nothing happened because it's inconvenient. I flip to the latest tab 2023, December 2023. Emily, you submitted an anonymous complaint to the National Medical Board, claimed family members' ethical lapses, your words. I traced the IP address. Would you like to see the IT report? Emily's eyes widen. You can't prove that. I just did. Lorraine's composure finally breaks. Emily, is that true? Her voice cracks, the facade slipping. Emily glares, chin set. I did what I had to. She never cared about this family. Not really. There it is, the dogma, the root of all their denial. I slide the binder shut, the rings click clean and final. You cared about the story more than the truth, about the comfort of turning me into a villain as long as you didn't have to see me. But here I am, not gone, not erased, and you don't get to decide what happens next. Ronald clears his throat, voice wavering. What do you want? Do you want us to apologize? I close my eyes for a second, feeling the room tilt, the ache of old wounds sighing deep in my chest. When I open them, I see not my father but a man who let a lie become easier than a daughter. My answer is unyielding. I want acknowledgement. I want you to say out loud what you did, not for me, because I don't need it, but for the record, for yourselves. If you want anything from me, help, money, advocacy, you name the wrongs first. Lorraine's hands twist, her voice small. We pushed you away. We believed Emily without question. We were afraid it was easier to pick a side. Emily is silent, lips pressed in a thin line. I nod. Once. That is the cost of asking me to return. The silence is thick, but I hold it. I have learned the value of a pause. How a surgeon's patience can mean the difference between life and death. How a few seconds can expose all the rot beneath a pretty surface. Emily stands abruptly, grabbing her phone. Her voice shakes, brittle with fury. You're so cold, Julia. You always were. No wonder you're alone. I feel the truth of it, and it glances right off me. I am not alone, I answer. Not anymore. I have people who see me, who chose me. You only came because you needed something I have. Ronald leans forward, the effort making him cough. I'm sorry, Julia, for what it's worth. I should have. I was your father. I should have protected you. I don't expect you to forgive me. I almost believe him. Almost. Lorraine's voice is fragile as spun glass. What happens now? I gather the binder into my arms, pressing it to my chest, the record of everything they tried to deny. Now I say, you decide what family means to you. But you do it without pretending I owe you everything. I will consider what I can do medically, professionally, for Dad. But the rest, your comfort, your absolution, you have to find that elsewhere. I stand the chair, scraping softly on the hardwood. Thank you for being honest. Finally, you can see yourselves out. Emily mutters something under her breath, grabbing her coat. Ronald moves slow, each step heavy and awkward. Lorraine supports his elbow. They look smaller than ever, diminished by the weight of truth, or perhaps by the sudden absence of the fiction they clung to for so long. I walk them to the door, not out of habit, but as a final courtesy. Lorraine lingers, one hand hovering as if she might reach for me, but she drops it, lips trembling. Emily's face is a storm. Ronald manages a tired, grateful nod. When the door closes behind them, the echo settles into the room like dust. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. For the first time in years, the silence feels like peace. And the navy blue binder, full, heavy, undeniable, rests on my table, not as a weapon or a plea, but as a testament. I survived them. I faced the ledger, and I kept my name. I walk to the window, the city pulsing with light below. Somewhere, Frank is waiting for me with dinner and her bad singing, and for the first time I feel the numbers reset, not counting wounds, but blessings. They can't erase what I've built, they never could, and now, they finally know it. For a long moment, I just stand there, the latch of my apartment door still cool beneath my fingertips. I listen as their footsteps fade down the hall, first the quick, clipped steps of Emily, Then the slow, weighty shuffle of Ronald and Lorraine, her voice a faint, desperate murmur. Come on, Ron. Let's just get you to the car. I hear the elevator doors sigh shut, the cables groaning low. Then nothing. Absolute quiet, save for the city's heartbeat thrumming through the floor. The navy blue binder rests where I left it, unyielding and solid. The light from the Hudson shifts across its worn cover, a ribbon of gold and shadow. I walk back to the table, my heels whispering against the floorboards, and trace my fingertip along the seam. My hands don't shake. I wonder if Lorraine noticed that, how calm I was, how unmovable. I wonder if it unsettled her to see that what she tried to break became the steel in my spine. I slide the binder into its spot on the shelf, between a medical atlas and a slim, battered volume of poetry that Frank gave me when I became chief. My name is on the spine of that book too, Marin. A life I chose, a life I earned, my own archive, in every sense. At the window, I breathe in the city's evening air, scented with rain and a distant hint of lilies from Frank's tulips. Across the glass, the world glimmers. Taxi headlights slicing through the dusk, the silver streak of the river, somebody's laughter echoing up from the street below. Manhattan is full of strangers who have never known my family's name, never cared about my scars. For a second, I envy them. Then I realize I'm not envious at all, I'm free. My phone buzzes on the counter. I pick it up and smile when Frank's name springs up, punctuated by a dancing string of chef emojis. Hey Doc, dinner's almost ready. Letty's threatening to make you taste her lemon pie experiment. Come hungry, okay? I let myself laugh, the sound bubbling up unforced, warming the cold corners the Marins left behind. On my way. Give Letty fair warning. I've survived worse than bad pie. Frank snorts. That's the spirit. You okay, kid? And I am. I am okay. I glance around my apartment, the clean lines, the quiet peace, the binder where it belongs. I think about all the dinners Frank made, every late night call, every hard-won smile in these walls. My chosen family, the ones who called me by my name and meant it. I'm more than okay, I say, voice soft but unbreakable. Thank you, Frank, for everything. She's silent for a moment, and I know she's smiling that crooked wry smile. You did it, Julia. You faced them down. That's what family's supposed to do. Stand up for you, not just when it's easy. I close my eyes, holding her words close. Family isn't just the people who gave you their surname, I say, half to myself. It's the ones who stayed, who carried you when you couldn't stand, the ones who saw you, even when everyone else looked away. Frank lets out a satisfied hum. You finally get it. Now get yourself over here. I'm not letting Letty eat all the lemon pie. The line clicks off. I grab my coat, check my reflection. There's a small, stubborn smile on my lips, and for once it doesn't feel like armor, it feels like the truth. As I lock the door behind me, I don't look back. The past can rest on its shelf, documented and done. The future is waiting, full of laughter, music, and the warmth of people who chose me, not out of duty, but out of love. Tonight, I step out into the world not as the invisible child, not as the Marin they tried to erase, but as myself, chief, friend, daughter, to those who earned the name. And as the elevator doors open, I know this for certain. Family is not the ones who share your blood, but those who stand with you, especially when the rest of the world looks away.